All right, let's dive into something we all probably take for granted. Data, we hear about it everywhere, right? It's valuable, it's important, but how do you actually put a price tag on it? Like, it's not like going to a store and just buying data off the shelf, is it?
Yeah, you've hit on something there. Data valuation is a surprisingly tricky thing, especially
Yeah.
now when data is everywhere, behind everything we do.
That's exactly. We're looking at two reports today about that. One's focused on the ways people are trying to value data, especially in development work, figuring out where to put resources and all that. And the other report, it goes deeper into why those traditional ways of valuing data, they might be missing the mark.
That's a really good point you bring up about data not being something you can just buy. Because one of the reports, it highlights this weird thing. Everyone calls data the new oil, but the money going into it, it's nowhere near what you'd expect.
That is wild. If it's so valuable, shouldn't we be throwing money at data left and right? I mean, one of the reports even said only 0.3% of aid money goes towards data. 0.3%. That's practically nothing.
It really is a tiny amount, and it comes down to this. Policymakers, they like things with clear results and fast. And data. Data collection, analysis. These are long games. It's not always easy to see the impact in a year or two.
So it's kind of like saying we need to fight climate change, but then putting like $1.50 into renewable energy. That's a total disconnect between what we say and what we do.
Exactly. And ignoring data, in the long run, that could be a costly mistake. Imagine if we could really use data for things like healthcare, education, even tackling poverty. The possibilities are huge.
Okay, you convince me. Data is valuable. But how do we measure something that feels so intangible? I mean, the value of data report lays out 5 main ways. And honestly, some were easier to wrap my head around than others.
Let's break them down. We've got cost-based, market-based, then income-based, benefit monetization, and finally impact-based. Each one has its strengths and weaknesses, as we'll see.
Okay, so let's start simple. Cost-based valuation. Like, if it costs this much to gather and clean the data, isn't that its value?
Well, it's not so simple. It's a start, sure, but you're mainly looking at the cost of making the data, not the potential of what you can actually do with it.
Mm.
Here, think about it like this.
Ooh, an analogy. I'm always up for a good analogy. Hit me.
Imagine baking a cake. Cost-based is like saying the value is just the ingredients, the flour, the sugar, but that ignores the baker's skill, the recipe, the fact that people enjoy eating cake.
Okay, now that's a delicious analogy. So cost-based is a starting point, but not the whole story. What about the market then? If I can buy data, shouldn't tell us something about its value?
You're onto the market-based approach there. Problem is, most data isn't actually traded like a product. Companies, governments, they hold on to it. It's not always out there for us to compare.
Makes sense. It's not like we have a stock market for data with values going up and down all day. Or do we?
Not yet, at least. And even when data is for sale, it's not always apples to apples. A data set could be super valuable to, say, Google, but useless to a small business owner. Context matters a lot.
Okay, so 2 methods down, and already it feels like data valuation is pretty slippery.
It is, and it gets even wilder when you realize data is often non-rivalrous, meaning me using a data set doesn't stop you from using it too. That really messes with traditional ways of thinking about value.
Okay, so cost-based, market-based, those are out. What about income-based valuation then? If a company's making bank thanks to data, can't we just follow the money trail?
You're thinking about relief from royalty, which, yeah, it can be useful. It's like asking, if I didn't have this data, what would I pay to use it? That cost you avoid? That's a way to estimate value.
So like the value of me knowing how to code is the salary I'm not paying a developer to update my website.
Exactly. But it only works if there's something to compare it to, right? A royalty situation. Plus, you're only seeing the value right now for that one use. Data's bigger than that.
Right? Like my coding skills aren't only valuable because I could charge for them. I might enjoy coding or use it for personal projects, stuff that helps people. Not everything's about money.
You got it. And that highlights something crucial.
Hmm.
Not all data makes money directly. Think of data used in public health, income there. It's healthier lives, fewer people in hospitals. Valuable, but hard to put a dollar amount on.
I see what you mean. Okay, so that brings us to benefit monetization. Gotta admit, sounds a bit textbooky to me.
It can get a bit theoretical, yeah.
Mhm.
But basically, you look at all the good things data does, and I mean, for everyone, society-wide, and try to put a dollar value on those.
There's something like a census. You look at how that data helps the government spend money, right? Plan roads, even elections.
Exactly. Better city planning, less traffic, healthcare that reaches everyone. All from having good data. The tricky part is figuring out How much is that worth in actual dollars?
Yeah, good luck figuring that out. How do you even put a price tag on, I don't know, more people voting or a community feeling stronger?
You're right. It's not perfect. You got to make some judgment calls, estimations. But it at least tries to include more than just pure profit. Unlike some other methods, it's about the bigger impact.
Okay, that makes sense, especially for data that really changes how people live. All right, last one. Impact-based. This one sounds like my style. Show me the results. Did having the data actually DO anything?
That's the heart of it. You look for real-world proof that data made a difference. One report, I gave this example with education, schools that use student data really dug into it. They saw way better results. They could actually target their teaching, help students who were struggling.
So it's like instead of wandering around lost, you've got a map. The data lets you actually get somewhere.
Exactly that. And those kinds of stories, backed up by research, that's powerful. It's not just theory anymore. It's real change because of data.
Okay, so 5 methods, each with its own quirks. But
Okay.
I feel like both these reports, they're hinting at something even bigger. Like even if we got these valuations perfect, we're still missing a piece of the puzzle.
You're picking up on something important, and this is what I find so fascinating. We have to think about value in a totally different way, beyond just money.
It's like they're saying data isn't just a thing to buy and sell, it can change the world. And that's got to factor in somehow.
You said it.
It really stood out to me, this option value thing. Like, sure, we can try to measure how data's being used right now, but what about all the ways we haven't even thought of yet? Isn't that part of the value too?
That's what makes data so different. It's got such staying power. Use it today, down the line, even 10 years from now, for something we can't even imagine. That potential, it's huge. It's got to be part of the value, right?
Like that box of old floppies everyone has in the back of their closet, you could just toss it. But what if it's got the next big tech breakthrough on it? We just don't know.
Exactly. Or think about all the scientific discoveries we're making NOW from data that's decades old. We've got new tools, new ways of looking at it. Data doesn't expire. It can become more valuable over time.
Mind-blowing. So we've got this option value to consider. What else are we missing when we try to measure data this way?
Well, it often misses the fact that different people care about different things.
Mm-hmm.
What a company thinks is valuable might not be the same for a community, a government, or even just one person, right?
Right. It's not always about money. It's about how data affects people, the whole social side of it, who collects it, who gets to use it.
Exactly. And that's when this whole data valuation thing gets really interesting. It makes us ask the big questions. Who benefits? Who gets left out? Whose values really matter?
It's a lot, especially as data just becomes more and more a part of everything, which I think brings us to the heart of this whole deep dive. Why does all this even matter to people?
Because, let's face it, we live in a world run by algorithms, data-driven, everything. Understanding data's value in all its messy complexity, it's not just for academics anymore. It's about making sure data is used for good for everyone.
It's about having a say in how this powerful tool shapes our future, right?
Yeah.
I'm walking away from this with more questions than answers, but definitely a sense of like responsibility now. We need to figure this out.
And that's a good place to be, honestly. We're only just starting to understand what data really means for all of us.
Thanks for diving into this with me. And to everyone listening, keep asking those questions.